All right. Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes, kind of.
Awesome. Okay, well, welcome to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name is Stephanie Arne, and I am the host of Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. It is a show that was on from 1963 to 1986, and then they did documentary style on Animal Planet until about 2010. And then they decided to bring the show back online as a web series. And now I do a bunch of really short, shareable, fun online shows. So I thought before we got to see some shows on sea otters, I thought I would kind of teach you about how I got to becoming the first female host of an animal show for Wild Kingdom, and let you see my path and the cool people that I met along the way and the animal stories that I came across along the way as well. Does that sound good?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here so you can see what I see. Okay. All right, can you see a bright orange screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Here we go. All right, so like I just said, we had a show on, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom had a show on from 1963 to 1986. And this was one of the very first animal shows that ever existed. It was very popular. Everybody loved watching it every Sunday night on TV. And for some people, it was the first time they'd ever seen exotic animals all over the world, let alone seeing these two gentlemen here you see, Marlin Perkins and Jim Fowler. They would go out and try to rescue them and save them, and they just got themselves in some very tricky situations sometimes, so it made for really good TV. But it taught everybody about how to care about the natural world and what to do in their daily lives to make a difference, to make this world a better place. But like I said, they brought the show back in 2013 with me as the host, and we go all over the United States and the Bahamas to film short webisode series that you can watch on YouTube. And they're all really short, so you can put them on a playlist and learn about pretty much any animal you can think of. I bet we've done an episode on at this point. But we'll get back to this in a little bit, and we'll watch one of the episodes when we're all done. So my beginning started in Iowa, and I traveled a lot as a kid. My parents moved about 10 times before I was 10 years old, and that made it really hard. Raise your hand if you've had to move a bunch of times in your life. Yeah, for those of you that are raising your hands, if you've moved at all, you know that it's difficult. You have to learn how to adapt to a new community. You have to make new friends. You have to get used to a new neighborhood. It's kind of a challenge and it can be scary. But after you do it a couple times, you learn that this isn't so hard, and I'm pretty good at this. And I kind of realized that at a very young age, I was an explorer, and I liked being an explorer, and I liked change. And I liked it so much that I moved a lot, even when I got older. But while I was in high school, I wanted to figure out how to make friends. So I made friends by doing a bunch of different sports and yearbook, and I took language classes, and I took newspaper classes. I took anything I could, and some things I was not very good at, but I tried it anyway because I wanted to learn. I wanted to meet new people, and I wanted to learn a variety of skills. Because if I knew a bunch of different skills, then that would make me more competitive in the job market when I grew up, and I kind of got that at a young age. So I really wanted to figure out what I loved and what I didn't like. So in 2005, I got my first opportunity to leave the country. Now, when I was a kid, we didn't have internet like you guys do today. We researched everything in the library. We read magazines like National Geographic magazine and just read tons of animal books. I was always obsessed with animals since I was about 3 years old. And I knew I wanted to teach about them. I just didn't know how. And I knew I wanted to go to these faraway countries. I just didn't know how. And thankfully, when I was a senior in college, there was an opportunity to study abroad, and you'll get these same opportunities too when you go to college, if that's what you choose to do. And I chose to go to West Africa. And my parents were a little bit nervous, and we didn't make a whole lot of money. So they said, if you can prove to yourself and to us that you can make the money and deserve to go, then you can go. And I had to apply for scholarships and grants. I had to apply for loans. I was doing a lot of babysitting jobs, and I tried to save $3,500 to go to Africa. And you know what? My parents didn't give me any money, and I made it happen because that's how badly I wanted to see the world. And when I was there, I saw some pretty cool stuff, just like those magazines I looked at when I was really little. And the people that I met were absolutely wonderful and kind. And even though they didn't have very much, they still were full of a lot of joy and happiness. And I was really happy to see that, because I think when I was younger, I thought that I had to have all the cool toys and all the cool clothes to be happy. And I learned here that that's not true. It's being caring and kind to each other. That's what really makes you happy. I got to meet a lot of really neat people and how they survive. How do they hunt their food? How do they grow it? How do they build their houses? These people lived in a village, but about 30 minutes away from here was a big city. In Africa, they have big cities, they have little cities, and they have villages. And it's pretty neat to see the differences. But everybody has their own stories. They have dreams. They have girlfriends and boyfriends. They have jobs. They have TV shows. They have all the same things that we do here. It just looks a little bit different. And I learned that when I went to the villages, that a lot of these people were really connected to nature. They really knew where their food came from. They used what they could from the planet without taking more than they really needed. And they respected the planet. And I thought that was pretty neat, because at 23 years old, I don't think I truly understood how remarkable the planet was, that we really need it for survival. We've lost touch of it. We think that everything that we have comes from a store, like a Walmart or a grocery store, but it doesn't. It comes from the planet first. And these people that I'm talking to in this slide, these people were teaching me about how they do that in Africa. While going on safari, we got to see lots of really cool animals. It was absolutely awesome. I never thought that I would actually be in Africa on a safari, seeing real live, huge African elephants eating from trees in front of me. It was so neat. But I also saw a lot of sad things too. Can you guys hear me? I lost my...
Hi, Stephanie, I'm back. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. The volume went off for me, so I thought maybe something happened. Okay, so we're all good. Okay, so I saw some sad things too that I didn't expect to see. I didn't expect to see that a lot of endangered species were being hunted, or a special word for that is called poaching. Okay, poaching is when there is illegal hunting of an animal. And it could be illegal hunting for food, or for their tusks, or for their rhino horn. And the gentleman in the bottom left-hand corner holding the gun, I thought was a poacher. So I'm like, let's go get him. And then they said, no, 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 he's a guard. He is actually out as somewhat of a nature policeman, roaming around, watching out for poachers so that he can catch them and arrest them so that they don't kill animals. So we waved this guardsman over, and he told me about how when he was younger, he used to be a poacher. And he used to cry every day because he killed elephants for their ivory, for their teeth, their tusks. And he started crying, and I was like, why are you crying? It was because I hated doing that, but we're very, very poor, and sometimes you have to do bad things in order to support your family because there's nothing else to do. And at first I was really, I wanted to be mad at him, just like everybody wants to be mad at people that do bad things. And then I realized that everybody has their own story. Everybody has a reason for what they're doing. And although I don't obviously condone any of the actions that he took, he had to do them in order to survive. And thankfully, because of the researchers and conservationists and scientists and veterinarians in Africa, they met him and offered him a better job where he could use his powers for good. And when I say powers, I mean Everybody has special gifts and talents and skills and knowledge. To me, that's your powers. And his power was knowing how to track animals. And he was really good at understanding why they went where they went and how they survive and why they behave the way that they do. So they went to him and said, "Can you please use those skills to instead help us find poachers and arrest them?" So I remember being so proud of him and saying, "Thank you so much for using your powers for good and now saving animals in Africa." Because this man knew that if he protected these animals, it would protect all the ecosystem, the whole food web that was around the village he lived in. Because a lot of animals are pollinators. Some of them uproot trees, and that throws seeds everywhere. And so seeds go all over the place, growing new plants for future generations. He understands that every single animal has a purpose, and he's part of that food web, and he needs to make sure he can do what he can to keep it healthy and balanced. Then he told me that he was also a teacher. Now he liked to teach other poachers how to use their powers for good and turn them to the good side. And then he also liked to go to schools and teach them about the ecosystem and all the animals. And I thought to myself, oh, that's so cool. I want to do that. I want to go around the world and teach people about animals and why they're so important. So after a month in Africa, I went back to America, and I worked at my very first job at Omaha's Honolulu Zoo and Aquarium. And Omaha I grew up in South Dakota and Iowa primarily, and Omaha is right in the same area in the Midwest. And I was so happy to see that there was such an incredible zoo right in the middle of the country. And I got to see why zoos exist in the first place. I got to see that behind the scenes there's a lot of research going on in order to try to save the animals in the wild. Sometimes some of the shows that you pay for at zoos, or tours you pay for, or even stuffed animals or food that you get at zoos goes to help pay for that poacher's salary in Africa, to help him so he can survive and not be a poacher, but be a policeman. And so we need zoos and aquariums to do stuff like that. They help us raise money. And I was really proud to be a part of it. So I was able to do lots of cool tours. And if you see in that bottom left-hand photo, that's a photo of me, and I'm doing something very similar there as I am right now. But it was 2005, and the technology was a bit different. But I was able to drag a computer into the rainforest exhibit and take kids from all over the world into a rainforest habitat. And then we had animal visitors that would come and stand in front of the computer and teach, and it helped me to teach. It was a really cool job. After a while, I wanted to travel a little bit more, so I moved to San Diego, California. I was always a little bit nervous of living in California because I was always told there was earthquakes all the time, but there's not. It's actually a really beautiful, incredible place. So I got a job at the San Diego Zoo, and I was doing very similar things. I loved teaching. Although I had tried being a zookeeper in many different animal departments, working with cheetahs and camels and penguins and giraffes, I realized that instead of being a zookeeper, I wanted to be a science teacher that's mostly taught about ecology and biology and animal science. I wanted to be the person that was connecting with the humans as well. And I really figured that out when I was working at the San Diego Zoo. In 2009, the economy got pretty bad, and I'm sure some of you teachers remember that. And a lot of us lost our job at the zoo because they just couldn't afford it. Couldn't afford us. And I got really sad because I thought, oh no, now I don't know what to do with my life. I'm a little bit scared. What do I do? And so I took the money that I had saved from working at the zoo and at a coffee shop, and I sold all my clothes and furniture except for what I could fit in a backpack. And I bought myself a ticket to go to the other side of the world. I knew that I wanted to see more of these people's stories. Just like the poacher in Africa, I wanted to know what was happening in a place like Thailand. I wanted to see how people lived and what the animals were going through there. I wanted to do conservation work and work, out in the field in the wild. While I was there, I saw some very interesting things. The world's a very different place, and that's okay. It was very interesting. But I did see some things like a guy walking his pet elephant. And the woman in the right-hand picture that's wearing yellow, If you look closely, there's a girl with a blue dress on, and above her shoulder is a really dark black ape called a gibbon. It's like a monkey, but it's not a monkey. And I went up to this woman. I'm like, how dare you steal that baby ape? That was so not cool. And she was like, you're already judging me. You don't even know my story. So I listened to her story, and she told me that she was desperate, that she lost all of her home and her family in the tsunami in 2004. A really big wave came over and hit Thailand, and it was a big disaster. One day she saw a baby gibbon standing by himself, and he got lost from his mom, and so she saved him. And then a tourist one day walked up to her and said, can I get a picture with this baby gibbon? And gave her $5. Obviously, she didn't plan to start a business with this baby gibbon to try to have a baby gibbon pet to make money. That's not what she wanted to do. She did not want to have a gibbon as a pet. She knows it deserves to be out in the wild. But she had nothing else to do. She had no other way of making money. And she promised me that as soon as she could find a job that she would, and she would either release the gibbon back into the wild if that was a smart decision to do, and if it wasn't, she would take it to a rescue facility that could care for it. But just another point I wanted to make to you guys, that everybody has their own story. I flew from Thailand down to Australia, where I got to work on the Great Barrier Reef. And I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, but it is a gigantic coral reef that's really, really large on the east coast of Australia. And on the reef, I worked on that boat in the top right-hand corner. And on that boat, I would take people snorkeling and scuba diving to help them see all, anemone fish, like Finding Nemo, right? So I'd help them find little Nemo fish. I help them find turtles and sharks and stingrays and giant clams and tons of little fish. It was a really fun job that I didn't even know really existed. But I'm glad that I got my scuba diving certification, and I believe you can get it at 12 years old. So as soon as you turn 12, start saving money, because you got to learn how to scuba dive. It's awesome. Then I traveled to the other side of Australia, and I was working with conservationists and researchers on researching whale sharks, the largest shark and largest fish in the ocean. And that's the bottom left-hand picture you're looking at. And right there, if you see my right hand, I'm holding a camera. And it's because I was learning how to do underwater photography and videography. And I didn't think I'd ever learn how to do that. So it was a pretty fun surprise in my life to learn that, hey, here's a new skill I'm going to learn how to have and use one day in my future. So what we were doing is we were trying to figure out why whale sharks why they migrate, when they mate, what type of food do they eat, how deep do they dive, all that very interesting stuff. It was really amazing. Then I got on a plane and went up to Borneo. And while I was there, I got to hang out at some rehabilitation centers that were taking care of monkeys and apes, like the pictures you see on the left. That's an orangutan and a proboscis monkey there. And those animals are being rescued because a lot of their rainforest is being cut down for an ingredient in a lot of our soap and makeup and food. And people can cut it down for really cheap, and it's so far hidden in the world that people don't really see it. So unfortunately, if we don't see it, sometimes we don't try to fix it or make it better. So I wanted to see it with my own eyes. So when I got there and I saw how many of the orangutans were being rescued because their trees were getting cut down for our food, I realized, wow, we really can make a difference by saving these animals' lives by paying attention to the things that we buy. If we know what we're buying and where it comes from, we could potentially save an endangered species. The person on the right, that's me, but the animals I'm holding are baby sea turtles. And on certain islands outside of Borneo, a bunch of sea turtles come up to the island, and they all try to lay their eggs at the exact same time. And so when they get up there, they're all crawling on each other and digging out each other's nests because there's hundreds of them on one tiny beach. And so researchers have come in to dig up those eggs and put them in the picture that you see, those green nets behind me. You see the red basket? All the green nets behind me are sea turtle eggs that are buried, have been reburied by humans, and we have a gate around it to protect them from humans and from birds and from crabs that could potentially try to eat them. Now, baby sea turtles have a really rough life. 100 of them could hatch at one point, but maybe 1 or 2 of them will live to be 30 years old. So we got to make sure to help them as much as we can to make it to that age. And the best way to do that is give them a good, healthy start right from the beginning. After Borneo, I went back to the Great Barrier Reef, and I was hanging out on a pier where there was a bunch of sailboats. And a gentleman came up to me and he said, I need researchers and scuba divers and animal experts. I'm going on an expedition through Papua New Guinea, and we are going to go and count a bunch of sharks and corals in the oceans, and we're going to make a new map of all the new coral reefs in this area. I was like, oh my gosh, I can finally be like a real explorer. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. So 3 days later, I grabbed my bag and I moved on to a sailboat. And I never thought I would live on a sailboat. That was really cool. So I got to learn a little bit about how to sail. Although it's not my most favorite thing in the world to do, it's pretty difficult for me. But there was a lot of people there that were very good at it and very passionate, and they taught me a lot about it. And I can't wait for one day when I get brave enough to learn how to be even better at it. But while I was there, I spent most of my time teaching other people how to scuba dive. And then we would jump in the water, and I would count fish and sharks and sea anemones, and I'd write it down, and we would, as soon as we got back to a shore and a place that had internet, we would send it in to an organization like the World Wildlife Fund or the IUCN. And so believe it or not, when you hear people say there's only 1,000 rhinos left in the world, it's because there's an explorer or researcher that's out there that's counting them. That's a job. And it could be with every single animal on the planet. And I was fortunate enough to help count fish, which you can't catch all of them, and you can't see them all. So we have to do mathematical equations to figure out exactly how many we estimate are on that coral reef. But it was still such an incredible experience. I was also fortunate enough to anchor up to some islands and meet some of the villagers, just like I did in Africa. And you know what? A lot of them were really curious. Where's all the fish? We used to have so much fish a long time ago. Where's all the fish now? And we had to tell them that us Americans and people from the UK and Australia and Japan and China and Thailand, that we were taking all of the fish, that we were overfishing, and we were taking more than we needed. And the people in Papua New Guinea were like, what? Why are you doing that? That's not fair. And it was an eye-opening experience to realize sometimes there's people that take more than they need, and that's called greed, and it's not cool. But you know what? These people forgave us and said, all right, what can we do to help? So even though they were on a tiny island and they didn't have computers or planes coming in and out of their island, they wanted to do what they could to help anyway, and I thought that was really amazing. After 2 years of traveling around, I was ready to go back home. I was pretty tired, and I really missed my family. And so I was heading back home when I found out that there was a big oil spill in New Zealand. So I flew down to New Zealand, and I volunteered to help clean up the beaches and help save some penguins and other seabirds that had gotten covered in oil. And oil we use in our cars and our helicopters and our planes. We use oil to make all of the plastic that you see in your life. Oil is a resource that we need. It's an ingredient that we need for a lot of things, or that we use for a lot of things. But unfortunately, oil can really make a lot of humans and habitats and people sick. And so we have to try to make sure that we take care of how we transport it. Or we need to look into a different form of resource, like solar energy or wind power, instead of depending on such a hard resource to get. Because when that resource falls on the beach or lands on an animal, it can make the animals really sick and can even die. And so I helped clean up the oil, and we even used Dawn dish soap to help wipe off the penguins. But a lot of them had ingested or swallowed the oil, and it made them sick, and they didn't want to eat any food. So that silly picture of me on the right-hand side is me making actual fish slushies or fish smoothies. So I put fish in a blender, and I had to grind them up, all their bones and their eyeballs and their brains and everything. Because I had to put it into a syringe, then I would help feed the penguins, because otherwise they were not eating by themselves. And so there is a team of people in the Oiled Wildlife Response Unit that travels all over the world, and all they do is help rescue animals and habitats from natural disasters and from human mistakes like oil pollution. So once I was done there, I came back to the United States, and I got a job at the Honolulu Zoo. I always dreamed of going to Hawaii and seeing waterfalls and dolphins and sea turtles and really huge trees, and I finally got myself there, and it was all I ever imagined. It was incredible. While I was working there, I did even more education. I was going around to all the schools that I could on the island, but I was also going on a bunch of news channels because I wanted to teach people on a bigger scale. And I know that sometimes TV and the internet can help reach more people, even if I cannot see them. And so I got a lot of practice doing that, which is really great, because about a year after working at the Honolulu Zoo, Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom decided they wanted to do a new online show about animals and wildlife conservation. And they actually picked me to be the host. It was probably the coolest day of my entire life. I dreamed of it for a long time, to be a host of an animal show. And just like you guys, I'm sure some of you watch Wild Kratts, Jack Hanna, Jeff Corwin. I grew up watching Steve Irwin and Wild Kingdom. And so I wanted to be able to do that one day too. And thankfully, because I wanted so badly to know so many different things about so many different animals, Mutual of Omaha looked at me and said, yeah, we want to help your dream come true, and we think you know a lot about a lot of different animals, so we're going to let you be the host. So now we have a YouTube channel that we just started, and we're doing a bunch of different videos, and I hope all of you guys visit it and watch a few and really enjoy them. And when you start watching them, you'll see that I met even more incredible people in my last 3 years of being the host. So in the top corner, you see that huge bird? That's a California condor, and the gentleman I'm sitting next to rescues them because a lot of them are eating animals that are full of lead, because hunters are hunting them with lead bullets. And then when this scavenger eats that dead animal, they ingest the lead bullet, and they get very sick from that lead. They get lead poisoning. So he's from the LA Zoo, the Los Angeles Zoo, and he rescues the bird, and he takes them to a vet hospital, and he cures them, and then he releases them back out into the wild. So now his job is to teach hunters in California, Arizona, Nevada to use different types of bullets if they're going to hunt. Obviously, we prefer that they don't hunt, but if they do, we want them to make the best choices that they can. We want them to use their powers for good. The guy in the top right-hand corner, he is a professor at the University of Miami, and he teaches people about how to save the American alligator and other reptiles in Florida. The picture on the bottom left are a group of people that live in Key Largo in the Florida Keys, one of my other favorite places in the world. And this group of people actually dive every single day that they can to help replant corals off the Florida Keys. A lot of corals are being destroyed because of weather, climate change, ocean acidification, and pollution. And so these folks are dedicated to replanting corals because you need a coral reef. A coral reef is like all the buildings in a city. It's like an apartment complex. And it provides homes and food from everything from a sea anemone to an anemone fish like the Nemo fish that you guys know, to octopuses, all the way up to sharks. and dolphins. Everybody needs that home, so they understand that and they dive every day to rebuild it. Okay, hold on. So I wanted to remind you guys that you are the most creative animal on the planet. Yes, you have cool thumbs and feet and you can make vocalizations and everything, but you also have incredible ideas and skills and talents. Remember those powers we were talking about earlier. And we've been through long periods of time, we've been using our powers and our ideas and skills to create things, right? Like language and cities and pyramids and, oh my goodness, art and videos and phones and cars and flashlights and lots of really, really neat things we have invented. And all of these people were just like you and I. And today there's 7 billion people on the planet. And we need to make sure that all of us have food and water and shelter and air that's clean and healthy for us to survive. And thankfully, a lot of people are using their powers for good, and they're creating things that make this planet healthier and better for everybody. But you don't have to wait till you're an adult to do those things. You could do them as kids too. Like these 4 kids here, Burke and Madison and Rhiannon and Boyan, they're using their talents and skills now. So Burke is now an author, and he teaches people about how important it is to have healthy food for animals and people. The 2 Girl Scouts in the middle, they are teaching everybody that the ingredients that are in our food are important also. Remember we talked about the orangutans are becoming endangered because of an ingredient that we are destroying the rainforest to grow that ingredient? Well, it's called palm oil. And palm oil used to be in Girl Scout cookies. And now these 2 girls, they said, no, we don't want to sell Girl Scout cookies if it has palm oil in it, because palm oil is an ingredient and a tree that is destroying the rainforest. And we don't want to be a part of that. So they asked Girl Scout cookies to either take out palm oil or get palm oil that has been harvested more sustainably so it doesn't kill orangutans. And then lastly, this is Boyan Slat in the bottom picture. When he was 17 years old, he invented an incredible machine that is solar paneled, and it is cleaning up all the ocean plastic. And to this day, he's still working on his invention, but now at 22 years old, he has researchers and scientists all over the world working with him to make this machine even better and healthier for the oceans. Even athletes, if you grow up to decide to be an athlete or actor or musician, they use their powers for good too. You know, they're singing songs that are helping the planet. They are doing commercials to teach people about how to protect it. And there's so many other careers that you could do that can really help the planet. So I really want you to remember that with everything that I'm saying today. This is what I do. I'm a host of an animal show. But you can do so many different types of things. And I like to think of them as yin and yang degrees. You have yin would be going into STEM degrees like science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But if you research and you find out after some time that's not what you want to do, the yang degrees are just as awesome. Artists, photographers, teachers, athletes. We all have a little bit of skills and talents in both of these areas. But no matter what, you just got to use your powers for good. So make sure you are a creative animal and that you use your powers for good too. All right.
Stephanie, thanks for sharing. Are you back? Oh, there we go. That worked. Sorry for the delay getting started, everybody. Right at 2 o'clock, when we were about to hit start, we had a lockdown drill followed by a tornado drill. So totally unexpected, but we had them both back to back. So that's what happened. So thank you for Stephanie for getting it started and sharing your story with the classrooms joining today. Really appreciate it. So I do have a video loaded up if you want me to share one about the sea otters, and then maybe we can take some questions from the students who joined today.
Yeah, do you guys want to watch a video on sea otters?
Let me turn on a mic. There we go.
Give me a thumbs up. Yeah? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, let's check it out.
All right, so it's just going to take a second for me to share. This one's called Table for One, and here we go.
every other animal in the wild kingdom, sea otters have to eat. But what unique adaptations do they possess in order to find a meal? Believe it or not, sea otters have a few tricks up their velvety fur sleeves to get food on the table. They usually hunt down below the water's surface, but always return topside to eat. Sea otters have a built-in dining set, so while floating on their back, they use their chest as a table. Sea otters are carnivores that consume 25 to 30% of their body weight to help keep that fast metabolism fueled and warm, eating over 50 types of invertebrates. But when it comes to the crowd, there's a steep learning curve navigating those pitchers. Sea otters are excellent tool users. When they bring up a clam or any other invertebrate with a hard shell, they have the best tool out there. It's called a rock. They find these rocks and then they store them in pockets or folds in their fur underneath their arm. Then when they're ready to eat, they put that rock on their chest and then whack the shell a few times until it opens up. And then they eat it. Nom nom nom. The teeth on these guys are tough, with the enamel over twice as strong as a human. They crush and grind with incisors on the lower jaw, scraping out the soft bodies of invertebrates. Once down on the ocean floor, sea otters use their long, sensitive whiskers, called vibrissae, to detect movements and find prey. Not only that, they have ultra-sensitive hands with more nerve endings than ours to feel for their prey. This helps them find their food without having to be in that murky water. While living in the aquarium, otters are not cheap dates because they're fed top-of-the-line seafood packed with a daily vitamin to ensure excellent health. And not just fed grade A quality seafood, but also ethically fished or farmed. Monterey Bay Aquarium has created a sustainable seafood guide for humans too, so we can follow the sea otter's good practices. Being a skilled hunter is crucial for a sea otter's survival in the wild. But no matter how much they eat, their fast metabolism guarantees that they'll always maintain a great physique.
All right.
Rainy
Let's
for you?
bring it back. Okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
I'm just saying, was that a little bit pixelated for you?
On my end, everything looks fine because I can see it right over. So it looked okay on my end.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well, let's introduce the classrooms we have joining us, and we'll let them go ahead with some questions. So we have a group in Illinois joining us. I believe they're grade 8s. Ms. Dwarfs. We have Mr. Smith, some grade 1, 2s in Toronto, Ontario. Mrs. Thiessen's grade 3s in Surrey, British Columbia. Mrs. Bark and her grade 6s in Thunder Bay. Mrs. Stouffer in Florida, some grade 2s. They might have had to duck out because I know they were tight with the end of their day. And Mrs. Dillon's grades 7 and 8s are joining us today as well from Farmington. So let's see, Mrs. Thiessen, if I know your group's lunch was coming up. If you're still there with a question, feel free to fire away.
Okay, come here. Come on up, ask your question. No, come over here so they can see you. Good, good. There you are. Excellent.
How are sea otters able to keep their skin so rubbery?
How are sea otters able to keep their skin so rubbery? So I'm thinking you're talking about their hands. And so their hands really don't feel rubbery. They're actually quite soft. If you feel the pads on your hands, imagine not having all the little rough lines that we have. We have a lot of little rough lines, and those are grippies. We use them to help grab a hold of things. They don't really have those the way that we do, so their hands are actually kind of squishy and soft, kind of like the bottom of maybe the padding of your cat's foot. Okay, so they have no hair on their hands at all, and that's why in the video you saw them sticking out their hands, because they live in a cold water habitat, and so their hands get really, really cold, so they stick out their hands like this, and sometimes you even see them rub them together. But everywhere else on their body is full of fur, and they actually have the most fur per square inch than any other mammal on the planet. Use my mouth. Any other mammal on the planet. So, yep, just no fur on their nose and on their hands.
Okay. Thank
Thank you.
All right, great question. Do you have time for one more, or do you have to run for lunch?
Sure, we'll have time for one more. Okay,
Okay.
Katie? Look into the camera. Green light, yeah.
How do sea otters hold hands when they sleep?
He said, how do sea otters hold hands when they sleep?
Together, it's called a raft, and what they'll do is they'll come right next to each other, and then they link hands. So just like you would hold your friends or your parents or your brother and sister's hands, they hold on hands just like this, and then they kind of roll the top part like that. And they just wrap around each other like that, and they all connect to make one big sea otter group. It's really neat. And they do that because there's safety in numbers. They want to protect themselves and all be next to each other. Just in case a predator comes along, if one of them wakes up and he moves, it's going to move the hand of the other one, and the other one's going to go, what? What happened? So it's very helpful for them to hold hands while they sleep.
All right, great questions. Mr. Smith's class, your microphone's on in Toronto.
Ready?
Have you ever encountered dangerous animals?
Have I ever encountered dangerous animals?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, of course. I think when you go out in the wild, you can encounter many dangerous animals, but I think that TV and movies and the news sometimes make animals appear as though they're out to try to hurt us or attack us or whatever, and that's not usually the case. The only time that happens is if you actually get so close to a wild animal that doesn't know who you are, they think you're a stranger, and then they get scared because they're afraid that you're a tall predator that could hurt them. That's when they're typically going to come at you and try to hurt you because they're trying to protect themselves. In general, any of the animals that I come across, whether it's a koala or a shark, I try to be as careful and respectful of their space as possible, so I stay away from them unless I have to rescue them. And that's when it becomes dangerous because now they're hurt and they're scared and they don't know that I'm actually trying to help them and save them. So there is times where I have been bit or scratched before, but that was because I knew what I was doing and I was trying to rescue them and help them. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Yes, any animal can be dangerous. Even our own dogs can be dangerous. We have to make sure that they know that we respect them and we give them space so no danger does happen.
Thank you.
Okay, do you have one more?
Izzy had a question here. Izzy.
Do you hide the sea otter's food in the zoo?
Do I hide the food in the zoo?
Yes, sorry.
Yes, okay. I was at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in Monterey Bay, California, and yes, they love to hide their food. Sea otters in the wild will dive down, and they can't always see because the water is murky, so they use their really sensitive hands, and they go like this. Oh, where is it? Oh, I found it, and they'll pull up a shell, or they'll pull up any of the, like a shrimp or a squid. So in the zookeepers that work with the sea otters try to do the same thing. They hide their shrimp and their squid and their pieces of fish in random little objects or somewhere in their habitat so that the sea otters have to practice that searching for their food every day.
All right, great questions. Our grade 6 class in Thunder Bay, your microphone's on if you have a question or two for Stephanie.
Yeah, set. What's your favorite animal that you've ever worked with? Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's probably one of my hardest questions because I really love working with every animal. I love working, I mostly love to work with the animals that other people don't like or that they're afraid of. So I really like working with snakes and sharks and stingrays and wolves, animals that have a bad reputation for no reason. You know, I think movies, like I said before, sometimes movies and media, they make some animals appear to be really bad guys, and they're not. They're really misunderstood. kind of like, have you ever met somebody who you thought maybe they wouldn't be very nice, but then when you actually met them and got to know their story, that they're actually really cool and they have a really important purpose on the planet? That's kind of how I am with those animals. So right now, my favorite animal is sharks.
Thank you. Okay, Mason. Quickly, Mason. Quickly, Mason.
What is your least favorite animal you have helped?
My least favorite animal that I've helped. Okay, so if we take species, I am very nervous around parrots. They're not, I like that you said least favorite. I don't not like them. I do like them. I just have a hard time with parrots because they're very smart. They're very smart and they're very tricky, and they have a beak on them that could bite your finger right off. And so they make me very, very nervous. Especially one particular parrot that we worked with, we rescued, and we didn't know where he came from. We don't know if he was treated very nicely before we rescued him or not. We're not sure. So when he met us, we were strangers and he was scared. And so he was really nice at first, and then he bit me. And then he'd be really nice, and then he bit me. And I was like, oh, I can't handle this. It was pretty hard to work with him.
Okay, parrots. I like your number one choice right now, sharks.
Yeah.
They're right high up on my list too, and I believe you were down in the Bahamas recently spending a little time with some sharks.
Yes, it was awesome to film the sharks down there.
Okay. Mrs. Dillon, 7 and 8, so your microphone's on.
All right, thank you. Haley, why don't you come sit over here so you're ready? To here? Yep, just look at the camera. Hi.
Hi.
Do sea otters have more muscles than us humans do?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I don't know the answer to that question. But I can definitely send you a link with somebody that will have the exact muscle, all the muscles in the entire body of the sea otter. I'll have that sent to you. Sound good?
Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wanting to know how smart the sea otters are.
That's a really good question. A lot of people are, we want to say that dolphins and elephants and apes, that they're like the smartest animals, right? But to me, if you are surviving in your habitat, then you are a very smart animal. And it's just that they become smart at doing their skill, and they're really smart with their purpose. So to me, I think really sea otters are very smart because they're really good at surviving in their habitat, which is in very cold water with a lot of people and a lot of really intense predators like great white sharks, for example, can go up into that area. And they have boats everywhere and surfers. I see sea otters in Santa Cruz that swim and are diving for their food while people are surfing over their heads. And they have to pop up and try not to get hit by a surfer when they surface for air. It's interesting to see how they care for their babies. They will defend their babies with their life. They're really good at teaching their babies how to dive down deep to find where lobsters and shrimps and crab and squid are. And they also use tools, which is a sign to us that they are thinking critically. They're going, how can I get this shell open? So instead of just trying to use their really powerful jaws, they are like, oh, let's grab this rock and see if we can break it open with a rock. Not every animal does that. So a highly intelligent species for their habitat for sure.
Thank you.
All right. Mrs. Dillon, we'll give you the final wrap-up question if you guys have one more.
Yes, we do. Okay, does anybody else have a question? I have a question. What areas around the see, we're in the middle since we're in Missouri. So what areas on the coast would we find sea otters? If we were going to go to a coast, where would we go?
Yep, you go to the West Coast. So you could start anywhere from, technically, they used to be in San Diego, but a lot of them have been going up further north. So I would say anywhere from, I would say to guarantee to see sea otters be around Santa Cruz and Monterey Bay and San Francisco.
Okay.
Like, I've spent a lot of time in Monterey Bay and Santa Cruz, and you see them all over the place. It's really, really neat.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Stephanie, I got to say it again. Thank you so much. Your passion's infectious. You're obviously such a great knowledge of animals and conservation going on around the world. It's always a pleasure to have you join in on Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And for the classes who are watching, please do yourself a favor tonight and look up Wild Kingdom, the page on YouTube. The first time I went on months ago, I couldn't put it down. There's so many great videos. Some of the new shark ones are up that Stephanie just completed recently in the Bahamas, so they're definitely worth checking out. Yeah, so again, thanks for giving us some of your morning. We'll steal them whenever we can get them.
Yes.
Yeah, so I hope you have a great weekend coming up. I don't know if you want to leave the students with maybe one last message or just to say goodbye, and we'll wrap it for today.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for listening to my story. It's a pretty crazy one. Obviously, you're going to have your own journey and your own story, and I hope that you totally go for it 100%. And don't let people stop you or tell you that you can't do something. If you know it's your skill, your talent, your power, your dream, please do what you can to make it happen. And I hope that no matter what it is, that you use your skills for good. And if you want to learn more or ask me more questions, you can visit my website at stephaniearne.com. And your teachers can probably help you with that. I hope you enjoy wildkingdom.com, and we have new snake episodes coming out next week where I am surrounded by a huge 20-foot python that's wrapped around me, totally safe, but it's pretty neat looking. So hopefully you enjoy those as well. And thank you guys so much.
All right, that sounds great. Yeah, thank you. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you, classes. Amazing. You guys are always so good with your questions. And Stephanie, I look forward to connecting again soon.
Awesome. Oh, yeah, I also have Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram, too, at Stephanie Arne. So you can ask me stuff there, too. Bye, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Bye.